Okay, so now we haven't done numbers yet, so we're going to be getting them right now. So we're on 1.5, and we're going to be covering math and numbers, so mathematic signs and numbers. I know we won't be using much with mathematical signs, but it's good to know them and good to know how they function when we look at other signs. So first we'll look at sort of the snapshot will be just in numbers in general. We're going to look at two different uses for numbers. The first one is going to be the cardinal numbers and quantity, like how we count and how we use them versus how we use them in math. So there's a slight difference in 1 through 5, which I'll explain in a second. And then we'll look at basic math functions, a couple more vocab related to that, and then we'll do some more with conversational stuff. We'll use them in class, starting in a little bit, asking about things like how many books do you have, how many movies, how many DVDs, stuff like that, how many pets. So we'll start playing around with numbers in that. We'll also look at in the numbers, there are different groupings and different patterns. So we'll talk a little bit about those. So cardinal numbers are how we count things versus how we use math to function. Like, for example, 4 books, 2 sisters, 1 car, as they say in there. So for 1 through 5, our palm is going to be back towards us. 1, 2, 3. 3 is with the thumb, not other patterns. I don't want to show the other ones to get in your head. So 3. We're going to do it palm back towards me. So this is for if I'm counting to myself is the best way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Palm is facing me. Now, in practical terms, if you do this or if you do this, it's not going to make that much of a difference. It's a much more subtle thing that when you're more fluent in ASL will make a difference. Because we use it differently, we function a little bit differently. I guess the best I can compare it to is, as hearing people, some people will use this for 3, some people will use this for 3, and some people will use this for 3, right? How many beers you want? 3. How many beers you want? 3. How many beers you want? 3. So we can use each of those sort of interchangeably. They don't have different meanings. In ASL, we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they don't seem to have a different meaning. But there's a very subtle difference in ASL that if we have the palm back, it's a more private thing. I'm talking about a number of things. If I'm ordering beers, I may do palm out. We have 2 chairs, 2 available chairs. Anybody want over here? 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So it's a more presentational thing than a private thing, if that makes sense. We'll have 2 books. So when we're counting, it's a more private thing. It's not going to seem like it makes that much of a difference. And for all practical purposes, out in conversation, if you flip that around accidentally, it's not, no puppies are going to die. But someone may correct you. Just nod your head, go, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, and change it. All right. Then, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to turn around for 6, and 6 is the pinky. And then we're going to work our way up to the index finger. 7, 8, and 9. And sometimes you will see, for clarity, people go 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't see that all that much in actual practice, but I can see how it can be clear. Oftentimes I see just that sort of emphasis. 7, 8, 9. Right. So again, palm is away from you. So 0, 0, 0. We've done that with, what's happening, nothing, nothing. 6, 7, 8. So if you think about it, it goes from the smaller to the larger. So 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 10 does this. 10. It's the first moving number. Now we get into more moving. From now on, all the numbers have some kind of movement in them. Sometimes it's moving from one digit to the next. Sometimes it's repeating a pattern. So 11, remember we use this for understand? We flick. And I want to get used to doing that flick. Don't just do this, because it's not waving. That's what we do with 13, 14, and 15. So we want 11 and 12 to flick. There's a little violence to it, right? 11, 12. Okay. 13, you show the 3 with the back towards you, and then you wave these 2. 13. Then you do 4 and wave the fingers, 14. Do 5 and wave these fingers, 15. So 13, 14, 15. Okay? It makes sense. There's a pattern. Almost all of these are patterns that make sense. 16 through 19. Now, I just want to also stress, pause whenever I get done with like a slide and practice those until you got them down, and then move on to the next slide, okay? Don't just blow through these quickly or you won't retain any of them. So for 16 through 19, there are 3 variations. The first one, line A, is the old-fashioned way, the classical, the most clear way of signing these. And we're going to do 10, right? So I'm not going to twist it like I did with 10. I'm just going to show the 10 and move to the 6. So palm back, 10, 6, 10, 6, 10, 6. So that's how we do 16, 10, 6. So the first digit, second digit, right? And then 10, 7, first digit, second digit. 10, 8, 8, 10, 9, 10, 9. Okay. So that you can imagine being very clear on a stage. 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. So we can, it's very clear. Now, if you remember when we talk about that proximalization, how we try to go from big movements to small movements, we've now gone, and I should reverse the lines. I understand why they did it this way, but I want to look at C next. The next evolution of these numbers is 16, which is taking that 10, 6 and now just keep not changing hand shape. 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 19. Okay. And then the next level of that is even more efficient, where it's even less movement. 16, 17, 18, 19. This was new to me when I moved to Ohio. It was kind of a regional thing, and I think it also happened to, because it's the more recent change, I happened to be moving to Ohio as the language was changing. So 16, 17, 18, 19. And I will recommend, don't go 16, 16, 16, 17, 17, 17. That's going to be more confusing. Work each set separately. So 16, 7, 16, 17, 18, 19. And it takes a little while to get past it being 2 numbers. You want to think about it as 1 number. Then the last one. Okay. So pause and practice those. 20 to 29. We've got 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So the only one that breaks the pattern that we're setting up here for the 20s is 22. It uses the 2 and bounces it that way. 22. All the other ones use an L for the 20. 20, 21. So 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Okay. Then 23, 2, 3. You also sometimes see this for 23. It's just a quick repetition of that one movement, 23. 24. Because this is a big movement, we don't see 24. No one repeats that. 24. 25, we will sometimes see that repeated. Sometimes people will do this. Most often people do this. 25, 25, 25, 25. Then the other ones, 26, 27, 28, 29. Very similar to that 10, 6, 10, 7, 10, 8, 10, 9. But it's with the 2. 2, 6, 2, 7, 2, 8, 2, 9. That will be a very tough one to get used to. It's literally going from this side to this side, this side to this side, this side to this side. So once you get used to that pattern, it will be much more easy to memorize these. I'm going to pause this, and hopefully it will just pause while I have to go meet someone, and I'll be right back. Okay. I think that went well. Okay. So 20, 21. It can also be just a once, 21, 21, L1. 22, it's the only one that uses the V, 22. 23, 24, 25, sometimes you'll see 25 or 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Oh, don't leave. Hold on. Okay. Okay. I think that's Flash timing me out. So the 10. So again, pause that, practice those, the 20s. So now the next pattern we're going to look at is the 10s digits. So starting with 30, 20 repeats 20. It doesn't just go 20. It repeats. Starting with 30, we're doing 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, 9-0. So it's just that. It's not 90, 80. 80 is really tough to do that with. So only 20 repeats. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Make sense? And again, practice those. And then we'll move on to, now the double digits. We saw 22, right? This is the pattern for all the double digits. So 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99. Okay. I don't know why they didn't put them on there. Anyway, 11 is the only double digit that really doesn't do that, and that's because it's this flick. Okay, so 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99. I'm going to, as I go through this, I may go back and add it to the PowerPoint, so when I share it with you, it may look a little bit different than that. But so now the next pattern is pretty much for everything up until 98. And it's 10s digit and then 1s digit. So 31, 31, 32, and 2, we're using this. We're using the V. All the way through the 30s, except for 33, right? 44. So we got 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, okay, and on. And then 50s, same way, 51, 52, 53. You don't have to move. They just can stay in the same place, 51, 56, 57, 58. The reason why we stop at 66 here is because we'll get into a little pattern that affects 67 through 98. And it's a little bit of rocking. It's not a huge thing. A lot of textbooks will make a really big deal of it, but it's a very subtle movement of the hands, which we'll get into in a second. So practice all of these. Go through, do any of the 10s, and just be aware that with each successive double letter, it goes 55, 66, 77. Okay? So basic math. So addition. You'll see plus and you'll see minus. It's very English, but it's also very clear. So we do still use that. For the sign for add, we tend to do this. Add. So this number, add this number, and then the sign for equal is this, but that really means like equivalent, to have parity, equity. It's equal rights. So equal. People will sign it in math, but it really doesn't mean the same thing. What we mean is how many. So remember that sign from the WH questions, how many? So 2 plus 1, how many? So just be aware that equals, you may see someone do this, what? But it tends to be very Englishy. How many? 2. You can also see this. So you can add this way. So if you're adding numbers in a row, you can add numbers in a column, like a spreadsheet. You can add them all together, so circle it around. So I'm grabbing any number I can find and adding them together. And we're mushing them, see? So that's the act of addition. And then how many? You can see here that you really, it doesn't really matter. If anybody decides to correct you on which 3 you're using, forward, back, just nod your head, accept it, and at some point it will feel natural to do it using the pattern from ASL. Subtraction, you can do negative, right? So here's the plus, here's the negative. The real sign is this, where you're going to scratch it away. So you're going to take it from here. So subtract. It's also a sign we use for discount. So here's the total, and we're going to take off a little bit, 10%. Right? 8 minus 3, how many? 8 minus 3, how many? So you can see that shift in, how many is that? Eyebrows down. Multiplication, and you will see it with M's sometimes. You will see it with K's, which K is in, I don't know why it's a K. Multiplication. This is also the sign for just general math. Basic, remember basic from grammar? Basic math. If we talk about calculus, we change it to a C. Algebra, geometry, trigonometry. If we need the English word, we usually just change the handshake, which, again, if you remember, we talked about it being very Englishy to initialize with the letter. But there isn't necessarily a separate sign for algebra and trigonometry and calculus. So if we need to, we can use trigonometry, mathematics. I find I don't sign multiply with M's, to be honest. I will sign mathematics like this, but I'll do multiply by this with the K's, the most general sort of form. Equals, that's my habit. I always do equals. To what or how many? Either one. And notice that what I'm doing too is when you're doing an equation, if you use that contrastive structure, 4, and over here times 2 is what? it makes sense, and I can see it visually. And like that's another one too. If you're doing multiplication, what's the total? I come over towards where the total is. I'm making sound effects today. Division. It's like the sign for silent, but you're taking whatever it is and you're splitting it, dividing it. Okay, so divide. So add, subtract, multiply, divide. Practice those. If you want, change the formulae. So we know how many. All together, and there's a few different ways, right? All together, all together, all together, all together. Figure out. So multiply. I've mentioned in other situations where there'll be one of the many vocab words that's specific will be the general term for the whole thing. Alcohol is the sign for whiskey or scotch or bourbon or something, the hard liquors. But that gets to be all alcoholic beverages. In this case, the sign for multiplication becomes the general sign for to figure out something, to calculate something. You'll also see it used as if something gets worse, it worsens, it multiplies. Oh, worst movie ever. Worst. Worst movie ever. And you have to fingerspell to get the answer. So, math problem. And I'll include the other vocab ones because there are some variations on some of the signs. So it's always good to watch more people sign things. So this will be an example of what we'll talk about in class, is how many books do you have, how many movies. I don't know how many books I have. I mean, and Snake Plissken. More books over there. Like I'm not a book hoarder. I've read them. I love them. I read them over and over again. But we will ask different questions of cats. So all things like that. Brothers, sisters. It's a good place to introduce some family signs. How many classes are you taking? So start thinking about some of the questions that you might want to ask somebody. Okay? And then we'll review, which is what this video is about. You'll probably notice I'm starting to include more materials from other teachers teaching True+Way as I see things that might be helpful. Watching another teacher might be more clear than watching mine. There are a lot of teachers who are doing all in ASL. I will recommend looking at what they're doing because what I'm providing is I want to make sure everybody gets this information. It's more of a challenge to do it if the signer is teaching and using gesture. But I also know that that's a lot of stress, and not every student has access to that. Even we're building a sign language vocabulary. And if you need voice, you shouldn't be excluded from this class. That's why I'm not doing these only in ASL. So I will include videos of instructors doing this in ASL only, ASL and gesture only. So I would recommend watching both of those and seeing what you get. Watching the instructions will oftentimes teach you more signs as well. But it does take some getting used to. It took me a while to get used to silent communication. I'm very much an auditory thinker. So it took me a while to be able to submerge myself like a submarine, to immerse myself that way and to be able to do it for longer and longer periods of time. So my hope is that eventually you won't want to watch my videos anymore because I'm talking too darn much, and that the other videos that I'll post are more helpful, if that makes sense. All right, so that's 1.5.